No, God! No, God, please, no! No! No!
Ladies and gentlemen and others, welcome to my channel. We'll be doing a deep dive as to why Pixar movies seem to be crashing harder at the box office than one of Elon Musk's rocket ships to Mars. If you are a Hollywood executive right now, you must be looking at the bloodbath at the box office and wondering if it's time to change your career path. Nah, I'm just kidding. They're probably just sniffing truckloads of cocaine while deciding which property they're going to milk to death with another sequel again. The plans for yet another pointless sequel in the Star franchise illustrates exactly why Pixar is at the creative dead end. Please give me a like, share and subscribe if you don't mind. If everybody that watched my videos actually subscribed, then I'd be able to double my subscriber count in a day. And if you enjoy this kind of deep dive, please let me know in the comments down below. It all helps me to make this channel the best it possibly can be.
Your best. Losers always whine about their best. Winners go home and fuck the prom queen.
Pixar movies are bombing at the box office because the concepts are poor, the design of the characters and the worlds are uninspiring, and the overall storytelling is also so bland, boring and mediocre that nobody wants to pitch up for it to see it once, much less see repeat viewings of it. The other problem that Pixar have is that their budgets are completely out of control. There's just no reason on earth why any of their movies should cost $175 million, not for the mediocre shit that they're turning out. It's very important that we all agree exactly what constitutes a bomb at the box office, so allow me to explain exactly how financial success at the box office works. First things first is the actual production cost of the movie, and Pixar seems to level out at about $175 million per movie. You can't just drop a movie out in the world, so every movie needs marketing budget. That marketing budget normally works out to be about half of whatever you've spent on your production cost for the movie. That means you can add on at least another $85 million for the marketing of any Pixar movie. On top of that, cinemas don't put movies out there out of the kindness of their heart, nor do they do it because they're scared of Disney, even though they are.
Maybe we'll just refuse to go on stage! Woof! You don't fucking talk to me like that! You little piece of shit! Get the fuck up! Get the fuck up!
Whatever is made at the box office needs to be shared equally between the cinemas and the studios. Where Disney is concerned, it can be variable. However, in general, what this means is that the cinemas keep 50% of whatever's made at the box office. So, if a movie has a production cost of about $100 million, its advertising cost will be about $50 million. If that same movie then goes on to make $300 million at the box office, the cinemas need to get their 50%, which is $150 million. That means the studio only gets $150 million back, which is how much they've spent on the movie up to that point. So therefore, you can say that a $100 million movie needs to make more than $300 million back before the movie starts making any profit for the studio.
I'm a tough guy. Tough guys don't do math. Tough guys deep fried chicken for a living.
Everybody loves a good graph, so let's have a look and see how Pixar's done in terms of its cost versus any kind of profit that it's made at the box office over the past couple of years.
Look at this graph!
What we've basically done here is the actual cost of the production plus the cost of advertising versus how much money it's actually made at the box office. And that's not too shabby, right?
Oh my God, Leonard, that's incredible!
Not so fast.
Let's not forget that half of the box office take actually goes to the cinemas. The minute you take away the cut for the cinemas, you immediately see that movies like Wall-E, Brave and Cars do now show up as being a loss. And it just becomes worse over time, with the last 6 movies in a row having made significant losses for Pixar at the box office. Obviously, we did have a pandemic in between, so those movies went straight into streaming, so there are no box office numbers for it. Having said that, it still led to a loss for the company. However, I do need to point out that Soul, Lightyear and Elemental all were released into cinemas. But hey, at least the sequels made them money, right? Yes, that is correct, fair enough. However, this does give us something else that's interesting on this graph. In the first 14 years of Pixar's existence, it only made 1 sequel, and that was because Disney forced them to. In the following 10 years, they made 7 sequels. 7. So let me hear that argument about how Pixar is still as creative as it used to be. But maybe graphs are boring. If we were to look at all the Pixar movies that have been done up to date, and then we look at how they rank in terms of how much money they've actually made over time, then it ends up looking something like this. The percentage shown is the actual percentage that Pixar would have gotten back, with the cinemas cut already taken off. So one can clearly see that all of Pixar's older movies fall into the green band, which means that they would have made profit, and all of the newer movies fall into the red band, including some notable stinkers like the Cars franchise. Basically just outlines that Pixar's profit and its quality has gone down over time. When you just break it down into those stark terms, you can see exactly how much trouble Pixar is actually in. The truth is that Pixar is getting its ass handed to itself at the box office by DreamWorks, Illumination, and even Sony Pictures. Pixar is getting a worse ass beating than Elon Musk would have if he didn't get his mummy to cancel the cage fight between him and Mark Zuckerberg. But hey, don't take my word for it. Let's take a look at cost versus profit for these companies for these three most recent movies. Right off the bat, we can see that one of the biggest things that they've done correctly is that they've budgeted responsibly. Across the Spider-Verse only cost $100 million. Now, I know what you're going to say. Only? Yeah, sure, that's what we're talking about for movies these days. Puss in Boots only cost $130 million. And again, Super Mario Bros. Only cost $100 million as well. That means that all of these movies had a lot less money to recoup before they started making profit. The comparison is a bit unfair. All those movies are franchises. One is a sequel and the other one comes with a huge fan base. And that is fair enough. However, what we're talking about is just budgeting responsibly right from the start. Now, in defense of Elemental, I will say that this movie has managed to hang around a lot longer than any of the other Pixar movies did, and it does look like it's on track to actually make some money back for Pixar. Okay, so here's my plan to fix Pixar's disastrous box office. 1. Disney, stop interfering. Just because something works for you doesn't mean it's going to work for Pixar. Pixar is known for something completely different. Allow it to be a different studio. Pixar, let's have a look at your boring ass designs and the way that you guys do animation. There's literally no meaningful difference in the concept design between Turning Red, Luca, Strange Worlds, and even for that matter something like The Good Dinosaur. You could take any characters from any of these movies, take them out of their own world, plop them into any of the other movies, and it would look like they belonged in that world. 2. Learn to recognize what a bad concept is. If a concept seems to be simple, straightforward, and on the nose, like for instance, let's show racial tensions through using elements, then maybe that is good enough for something like a short story, but not good enough for something like a full-length feature. Don't waste $175 million on something that can be told within 10 minutes. Speaking of which, point number 3, stop making all your budgets $175 million when it doesn't need to be.
What the fuck is wrong with you? You fucking animal, you piece of shit, little tiny dick licker fucking asshole fucking fucking rich people.
The biggest problem with Pixar though is its stupidly ridiculously inflated big budgets for all of its movies. There's just no reason why they're doing this, and it's just another reason why they aren't making the money back at the box office. The ridiculous overspending that Pixar is doing on its movies is more pointless, stupid, and egregious than the amount of money Elon Musk wasted on buying Twitter. Unnecessarily inflated big budgets equal lower profits. It really isn't rocket science, Pixar. Get your act together.
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
Look at it sensibly, you can immediately see that the budgets are a big problem, and this might be because Disney believes that they've got more money than God, but Pixar really, you shouldn't be buying into that kind of a system. One can probably see that just by looking at other movies that have been produced over the past couple of years, that there's just no reason for Pixar's budgets to be as inflated as they actually are. I'm not going to talk about the box office about any of those, but all of them made more than $500 million back for those companies. What I am on about is how much better the animation looks for any of those movies as compared to anything turned out by Pixar. 4. Storytelling. The storytelling in Pixar movies used to be really excellent. However, what's happened in the past couple of years, maybe due to the bad concepts that people have been given to work on, the stories just aren't as good or as engaging as they used to be. Now, I'm not saying that the Mario movie was a well-written movie that was incredibly middle of the road. However, it did have a built-in fan base that made up for it. You coming from a place where you don't have a fan base that's built up, so you need to work a little bit harder on your storytelling. Pixar used to have the ability to make us care about characters, whether they were a toy or whether they were a fish. These days, I couldn't even be bothered to care about any of the characters that I've created in the past 10 years. And this is a failing in terms of the storytelling, nothing else. Write characters that are interesting and write a world that's interesting and write a story that engages the audience. How else are you going to generate word of mouth for characters that nobody's ever heard of before? You need to get people talking about characters, and we only talk about characters if we care about characters. Now, I'm not going to claim that fixing Pixar's storytelling issues that they have is an easy thing to do at all. Storytelling is an incredibly specialized skill. However, a good starting point would be to not use directors that just simply don't have the experience to actually direct a full-length feature film. Experience doesn't just relate to budgets though. It's also to do with other aspects of the production, as for instance in the case of The Good Dinosaur, the director on that found out. An inexperienced director is simply going to be out of their depth. There's just no avoiding that. And unfortunately, it will show in the final product that you will deliver. I'm just going to come out and say it, but sorry Pixar, the directors that you've recently chosen to helm your movies just don't have the necessary life experience or experience at helming movies to actually know what good storytelling actually even is. You don't even have to take my word for it. All you need to do is look at the track record of the most successful Pixar movies of all time, and you'll see that I'm 100% correct on that. All those directors were older, all those directors had a lot more experience, all of those directors were capable of running bigger teams, and all of those directors were capable of doing problem solving. These skills seem to be missing from directors more recently employed by Pixar. For every Pixar movie that was successful at the box office, you have a director that have a lot of experience. Any of the flops, you can look at those guys and you can see that they just don't have the experience. Now everybody dunks on The Good Dinosaur because that was Pixar's first flop, and technically you can't blame the director for that. The original director was Bob Peterson, and he was fired from the job because there were problems with the storytelling. The problem was The Good Dinosaur was not a good story in the first place, and the second problem was that Peterson just did not have the kind of experience needed to helm the project. He had major difficulty dealing with most of the different departments. When he was promoted into the lead director position, he had only written one story up to that point. So, what happened after The Good Dinosaur was a worse disaster than that time that Elon Musk tried to host SNL.
But we can also ask my mother, who's here tonight. Her name is May, like the month, but with an E at the end.
Thanks for spelling my name, Elon.
Fuck.
Well, basically after the disaster of The Good Dinosaur at the box office, everything that Pixar put out has been a flop at the box office, except for their sequels. That's why we looked at the graphs earlier.
Look at this graph.
Again, it just basically comes down to bad concepts and shitty directors. All of the concepts for the latest movies have been incredibly one-note. What if a kid was a sea monster that wanted to be on land and it's an allegory for same-sex attraction? What if a girl turned into a monster every time she got excited and it's an allegory for menstruation? What if people were portrayed as elements and it's an allegory for racism, religious intolerance, or gender issues? What if we retell the adventure of Buzz Lightyear but we ignore the history? And then, on each one of those ideas, let's pile on some daddy issues or previous generation issues. To all these creators, I want to say, I know therapy is expensive, but maybe do that instead of trying to resolve your issues on screen and boring the rest of us to death. Now compare those ideas to the tale of toys that become sentient when people aren't around. A rat whose sole ambition in life is to become a gourmet chef. Or a robot surviving a post-apocalyptic world who finds purpose in true love. All these stories are heartfelt and fresh, original ideas that have stood the test of time. Sadly, even here, Pixar have taken on the wrong lesson by churning out sequels whenever they get a chance. In their panic after The Good Dinosaur crashed and burned the way that it did at the box office, Pixar came up with a brilliant plan. Let's just go back to all our sequels. Everybody loves our original characters. We will just use those guys and we will just milk them to death. And that's been the story ever since then. We'd be here all day if I had to sit here and list all the great directors that are actually out there that could make decent movies for Disney. The fact is that good directors and good writers are hard to find, but maybe that's what Disney should be spending their money on. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that all of these things are actually connected. If you start off with a good concept, you're halfway there. A good director is not only able to recognize a good concept, but they're also able to take that concept and make it into a good story, creating characters that all of us could care about. And if Pixar actually just planned all of those elements properly, maybe they wouldn't be wasting this much on big budgets either. It's really not that hard, Pixar. Good directors, good story writers will give you good storytelling. All that's needed from you is to actually do your due diligence and not just give every single person that walks through your front door an opportunity to direct a $175 million movie. Disney needs to realize that they can't have the cake and fuck it. They bought Pixar for its own unique sensibilities, and now since then, all they've done is try to destroy that unique sensibility and make it a more homogenized and generic product as the years have gone by. The other problem, of course, is the fact that Disney has trained its audience to expect all the movies that they produce to be out and streaming on Disney Plus within 2 weeks of the movie actually being in the movie theaters. This is a huge problem because why on earth would I want to go watch a movie if I know I can just see the thing that's streaming a week later? Now, Mickey, I know that you love that sweet, sweet cheddar, but you really need to back the fuck off and allow Pixar to be Pixar. The appeal for Pixar movies has always been to experience it with a bigger audience, so allow them to have their time in the theaters to do exactly that. And also, how difficult is it to draw a hard line between the kind of stories that Disney loves telling versus the kind of stories that Pixar became famous for telling? Allow Pixar to have their own stories, their own characters, and more importantly, their own designs and concept around these stories. Now, of course, I could be completely off base with all of this. Maybe Pixar's had complete autonomy all this time and all the fuck-ups over the past couple of years have been completely their own fault. In which case, Mr. Mouse, there's no reason for you to come pay me a visit.
Now, do we have a problem? No, sir. No, Mr. Mouse. No, Mr. Mouse. Oh, that's good, because I thought we had a problem for a minute there, huh?
Everybody knows that when Pixar came along, they revolutionized the animation industry. They did this through the use of innovation and technology, changing the way that animated films look from 2D to 3D. Unfortunately, they seem to have lost a lesson over the years that what goes into disrupting the industry is not just innovation, but it is in actual fact also really good storytelling. These days, Pixar's reliance on technology unfortunately means that while their movies look better than ever, conversely it seems their stories have gotten worse and worse with each new iteration that comes along. Anyway, that's it guys, this has gone on long enough. Thanks once again for being here. I wouldn't want to overstay my welcome like Disney and Pixar have. If you feel that anything that I've said makes any sense, please give me a like, share and subscribe down below. It definitely helps me to keep on going. Thanks again for pitching up every single time I put one of these out. I really do appreciate you being here.
I'm pretty tired. Think I'll go home now.